When you think about all of the historic basketball venues of the world, you probably think about places like the Boston Garden, the Great Western Forum, Allen Fieldhouse. You probably don't think about Scranton, Pennsylvania, but maybe you should? On April 19th, 2005, in the modest warehouse of a paper company called Dunder Mifflin, basketball sprang up from the ground like liquid gold. And this is how it went down. Michael Scott, regional manager of Dunder Mifflin, has challenged Daryl Philbin and his warehouse staff to some hoops at lunch. It's being referred to as a reason to get everybody together and a friendly game. But in reality, there are three warring forces at work here that have nothing to do with basketball. First, there's Michael's weird obsession with impressing the warehouse staff. Second, there's the entire company's desire to not come into work on a Saturday. Third, there's Jim's consistent desire to impress Pam, the receptionist. All three of these forces are about to collide. In a discriminatory tour de force, Michael has picked his team. He's going with himself, Jim Halpert, Ryan the Temp, Dwight Schrute, and Stanley Hudson. For the warehouse, it's a short rotation full of tall men. Roy Anderson is 6'4", Daryl Philbin is 6'2", and Lonnie stands at a towering 6'5". Jerry and Madge, both of whom are rarely in the show, round out the five. The sales team does win the tip because of a terrible jump ball by Pam, but they let themselves get in a hole early. Stanley looks like he's never been in the same room as a basketball and dribbles it into traffic and turns it over. Roy scores easily. Failure to communicate leaves Lonnie wide open for an 18-footer, which is his only shot of the game, and he drills it. With such a size disadvantage, the sales team decides that they're going to junk things up here before the warehouse can get into their offense. Jim intercepts a pass and makes a beautiful sideline save to Michael, who is wisely streaking towards the rim. But at this early stage of the game, we've lifted the hood and discovered that we have a huge problem. Michael might be the worst shooter walking the earth. The sales team changes it up again, going from a junk defense to a softer zone look, which seems like a nice idea, but it quickly fails. In a move that doesn't really reflect his work ethic at all, Jim is trying to do too much here. He tries to create a steal, but this leaves Michael and Dwight vulnerable. They're preoccupied clapping and shouting defense. Daryl throws it over the top to Roy, and Roy scores easily. Next play, we get an ISO for Jim on the right side with Roy guarding him. Jim, who's rocking the Reebok Answer 3s, which makes sense because these are Allen Iverson's fourth signature shoe, and we're 2 hours from Philly, but these shoes came out in 1999 and it's 2005, which makes me think that Jim hasn't been playing, but I digress. Does a great job setting this move up. Roy thinks that he can steal this ball, and he gets burned by a lovely behind-the-back move by Jim, who gets in the lane and scores an easy 2. Michael then proceeds to attempt a 35-footer in transition, which goes as you would expect. Just as things are looking bleak, something incredible happens. This flare screen that Jim sets for Dwight is the most competent sequence of the game for the sales team. Dwight makes a great cut, Madge and Lonnie don't talk, and Ryan the Temp throws a great pass over the top. Dwight nails it. This triggers one of the most impressive sequences of negative plays in the recorded history of basketball. During this run, Michael Scott complains about not getting the ball after Dwight hits a shot, calls a phantom foul after clearly guarding with his arms. His undeserved free throw sails over the backboard. Attempts a long 2 when Jim has Lonnie sealed and Ryan is wide open. Over pursues Roy again and gets blown by. Shoots yet another long transition 2 and Lonnie calmly blocks it. Tells Ryan to cut, calls for the ball, looks away and it rockets out of bounds. And finally rides Roy's weak hand and Roy effortlessly passes the ball to Daryl for a layup. Really impressive illegal screen here by the Sea Monster. The warehouse could have cruised to a big lead here, but they didn't, and frankly, this is an indictment on their ability to put people away. Things get better momentarily as Dwight seizes the opportunity to bully Madge for a steal and a score, taunting her afterwards. The lead's down to 1. And then worse, when Michael rifles a full court shot 7 feet over the backboard and gives up a pick 6 while attempting to show off. It's long overdue, but the sales team takes a timeout here. Jim wisely insists on taking Roy, and this sets up the key stretch of the game. Bizarrely, we get an actual Michael Scott-Jim Halpert pick and roll here, and it works because of more terrible communication and effort from the warehouse. Roy is in drop coverage, not a bad idea, but Lonnie again is not fighting through this screen at all. Dwight floats on the baseline to force Roy to make a tough decision, and that's enough for Jim to get to the rim and score. Now it's starting to get chippy. Roy aggressively posts Jim, but he clocks him in the nose-mouth region. Naked aggression is the call, and we're going the other way. Jim isos Roy again. Reasonably good defense from Roy here, but Jim repays the physicality with what really is a player control foul, clearing Roy out and scoring in the lane. The warehouse appears to be tiring, which is huge. Roy now is carelessly dribbling with his weaker hand out top, and Jim easily swipes it and scores. Jim is pulling out all the tricks now, and he goes for what I can only describe as the dirty Leitner, and clears Roy out with an elbow. I'm not sure what the warehouse is doing. I mean, there are no three-pointers in this game. You should be pounding the ball inside to Roy and Lonnie. Daryl shoots a hard ball here. Pretty terrible follow-through and questionable touch, but still, it banks in. Dwight's intensity continues to run amok as he steals the ball from Ryan, his own teammate, but it's such a bizarre play that I think that the defense is caught off guard. The last bucket of the game comes from Phyllis, undervalued and overlooked as usual, as she coolly shoots a 12-footer that bounces in. If you've seen the game, you know that it ends in controversy. Michael unknowingly wanders too close to Jerry and ends up putting his face in the path of Jerry's elbow. Michael goes to the monitor in his irrational mind and says that this is a flagrant, personal, intentional foul and calls the game. Based on this woefully small sample, let's do some definitive and ironclad power rankings that will endure the test of time. I'm sorry, but Stanley has to be at the bottom. Stanley would later have a heart attack in the office and he should not be playing. Just above him is Michael. We know that Michael is a great skater and a hockey player, but as a hooper, he is an absolute liability. The outfit should have been an indicator of what was coming. If Michael has a clear idea of what he can contribute, fine, but he doesn't. Of all the players in this game, Michael posted an abysmal game score of -4.6. He went 0 for 4 from the field, and if he touched the ball, something bad happened. His resume as a GM has to count against him too. In record time, he catapulted himself into the company of guys like Elgin Baylor, David Kahn, and Isaiah Thomas as one of the worst talent evaluators and general managers ever. When Michael denies Dwight's request to play, he tips his hand to us straight away that he has essentially no idea how good or bad he is at basketball, and subsequently no eye for how good or bad other people might be. Dunder Mifflin might as well be called Dunning-Kruger. Next is Jerry, who dribbled the ball one time in this game and turned it over, but he doesn't need the ball and he stays out of the way. Madge didn't fill the box score, but she's a scrapper. Later we would find out that Madge's last name is Madsen. Could that mean that she's related to Mark the Mad Dog Madsen? These are the questions that keep me up at night. Phyllis is a great teammate, a positive presence, and she hit her only shot in limited action. Bob Vance likely complained about her minutes in the following days. Ryan the Temp was an understated presence in this game, but he rarely hurt the sales team. And might there be some untapped ball skills there? This might be seen as controversial, but I'm actually picking Dwight before I'm picking Daryl. Daryl might be a little more skilled. He's more of a facilitator than a scorer, but he vanished for long stretches during this game. And say what you want about Dwight, but we know that this guy is obsessed with efficiency. He's got a motor like a Bugatti, and he has just the right amount of crazy. Plus, he could shoot it a little bit, and I don't think anybody saw that coming. Am I ranking Lonnie this high because I love and miss Patrice O'Neal, and also because I think he was grossly misused in this game? Yes, I am. Roy is a specimen, I'll give you that. He's 6'4" and built like a truck, and he shows some ball skills and touch throughout, but do I want to build my team around him? Based on what we've seen, I'm leaning no. One of the great blunders of Michael Scott's tenure as a GM was the mishandling of Kevin Malone. To be honest, this probably applies to the writers of the show too. It was difficult over the course of the show to track who Kevin really was. Anyway, it only took a few seconds for us to see that Kevin is the best shooter at Dunder Mifflin, and the Kevin-Jim pick and roll has to be one of the truly lasting what-ifs in the history of basketball on TV and in the movies. Can he move or do much of anything else? It's hard to tell, but in this setting, it probably wouldn't have mattered. Jim is the clear number one here. He can handle it, he can shoot it, he can make the smart off-ball play. His offensive output carried the day, and he did what stars do. He took over when it was winning time. But what do we know about Jim's drive? What does he do when he's at the top of the mountain? Jim seems to shine the brightest when he's climbing. The show was more intense and romantically charged when he was pushing towards something, particularly when he was shamelessly pulling out all the stops to convince Pam to cheat on Roy. Also, quick aside, I don't know about you, but I really wish we could have seen Todd Packer in this game. Michael makes it clear at one point that the Pac-Man plays, and something tells me that Todd Packer would have been one of those nasty guys inside with a crafty scoring bag around the rim. I guess we'll never know. As far as I'm concerned, basketball is one of the truly classic episodes of The Office. The game itself was very flawed, and it came to an unsatisfying end, but in a way, it was perfect. Through the prism of the greatest game ever invented, we got a vivid look at who these people are. Except for Kevin. Kevin got screwed. Let me know if you agree on the Flippity Flip.